All right, what's up, you guys? This is Devin from CenturyFX Studios, back with another video. Now, this is a follow-up to my prom tips video, and it wasn't more of a tips video. It was more like a long monologue, like, I love to do. But it was all valuable information that anybody could use on prom day for their pictures. Now, for those of you who are moving on to the prom location, inside the venue of where prom takes place, and you're taking pictures there, and you're that unfortunate soul, I have some tips for you as well. Let's get right into it. Now, the first thing we want to talk about is, of course, the beast in the room, lighting. Lighting is 90, if not 100% of your image. Knowing how to light and have a good, well-lit image is a huge part of whether or not you're going to be able to get that image off and in in a professional like manner or a high quality like manner. Now, if you're shooting with a DSLR mirrorless camera, you have a leg up because these cameras are good in low light. And if you are, subjected to just using natural light or whatever light that they give you in the venue, then you have a little bit of leg up if you have a full frame camera, because full frame cameras they can focus more in low light, so they can focus better. They are more able to latch onto focus in low light. Now, if you have a old full frame camera that only has about 9 focus points, and not all of them are cross type, these are for my advanced camera users, then use that center point. If you use that center point in your focusing grid, you're able to lock focus better, because more often than not, most cameras focus best in the center of the frame. Now, you might have to focus and recompose, but it's better than not having the shot at all, because what you're faced with is nothing but DJ lights and background lights that may or may not illuminate your subject enough for your camera to see well, and then it won't focus and you will not have a picture, period. So that's something that you have to worry about. Another thing, if you're lucky enough, now this might distract the people who are dancing and things of that nature and having fun. If you're lucky enough to have an LED light on your camera, you might want to use that if you're doing a video especially, but if you're doing photography, it may be frowned upon. Another thing that you could use, and this is the option that a lot of people are used to, but it definitely does liven up the dance floor, is a flash, a strobe, a speed light. Now, if it's on top of your camera and people know that you're coming, and people know, that there's photographer that's supposed to be here and nobody cares, it's no problem to go ahead and flash them. Using ETTL is the optimal way to do it, because if you use ETTL, then you won't be prone to overexpose the subject. You won't have an issue flashing a person in darkness. It's just straight darkness, and having that high amount of light blasted in your face in extreme darkness makes the image look really artificial if you can't pull off the light. Now, with that being said, you also have the DJ lights. The DJ lights are another obstacle to either use or be in your way, because if the DJ lights are backlighting your subject, then your subject is going to be more of a silhouette. But if you're actually taking pictures of the subjects, if they're doing line dances like the cha-cha slide and things of that nature, if you're taking pictures of subjects, then they're typically going to face the DJ a little bit more, and you're able to focus a little bit more to be able to get that shot. These are very advanced situations that you're going to be in, where you're strained for light and you're looking for your camera to focus and actually actuate. Now, as far as settings are concerned, you want to be at least 1/100th of a second or faster. Now, if you have a speed light, there's a different story. Now, if you're using natural light, like I said, 1/100th of a second. But if you're using a speed light, you want to be able to use a feature called rear curtain sync. Now, rear curtain sync will allow you to shoot at shutter speeds that are below 1/60th of a second, your likes of 1/10th of a second, 1/20th of a second, maybe even slower. And what this will do is allow you to take pictures at a different sync of the curtain. And what this will do is freeze your subject for the most part, and have the ambience still moving around it, which gives you a nice lighting effect, but also allows you to use your flash at any shutter speed, almost any shutter speed that you need to. And usually when you're in that dark lit environment, you need to have longer shutter speeds to liven up that light in the background, because you won't be able to see any light. And if you blast everything with a flash, it just looks like artificial flash lighting. But if you're able to get that flash on that rear curtain sync, then you're able to have a more naturally looking image, where it's lit in the foreground but not blasted the whole scene with some artificial daylight or 5500 degree Kelvin light, which is not, the scene at all. It's more like DJ lights, different colored gels and stuff like that. So those are some of the things you want to think about. You also want to think about all the other little props that the school has provided for the students at the actual event. Maybe they have a stage, maybe they have colorful lighting and stuff like that. You want to use those lights as practicals. It's always a nice country club or a nice hotel or something like that where they have nice dim lit lights for some type of romantic type scene, or they have red lights, very very colorful lights coming from the DJ booth or something like that. There's always some kind of lights coming from your DJ, so use that to your advantage if you're using them as background lights or something like that. You also want to use different lights around the table. Maybe you want to get two people, close to the table or something like that, or get people close to practicals, lights that are in your situation that you want inside your frame that just appear in the background. Those are called practicals in the photography world. Those things can help you make or break an image. Whereas if you're just taking them in a low light situation and you don't know if you're going to focus or not, that's not the best way to take a picture, especially if they're sitting at a table. Typically, if they're sitting at a table, there's some light close to them or around them. Use that light to help you focus, and then use your speed light to help fill the surroundings, or use the speed light as a main light and go ahead and bounce and fill that wrapping main light around the subjects. Those are a whole bunch of different tips that you can use to help you in this challenging environment, because proms, weddings, and low light situations where there's receptions and dance floors and things of that nature, where the mood of the lighting wants to be very, very contrasty, but it doesn't help your camera at all, they become the most challenging situations that you can ever get into as a photographer. And you have a big camera. That phrase that you're the photographer, so you should know. People expect you to perform just because you have a $300+ camera, and they don't know what you might be going up against. And if they see that flash, they expect you have an optimal image for the situation, better than a cell phone can create, and you become stressed out and things of that nature. So those are for the people who have mirrorless and full frame and higher tier cameras that cost plus $300. Now, for those of us who have cameras that are cell phone cameras and point and shoots, your standards aren't as stringent, but people do expect you to use a flash. If you're taking a picture of a high schooler, I was taking a prom pictures last weekend and the weekend before that, and every time I saw somebody with a cell phone trying to take a picture, the person who was getting the picture of, or they were getting the picture of, they kept saying, make sure you have the flash, make sure you have the flash, make sure you have the flash. But one thing that they don't understand about the flash is struggling too on the cell phone camera, because the flash can't go that far. And if you're taking group pictures, the more you have to step back to encompass everybody in the shot, the more that flash has to struggle, and then that exposure is more inclined to be off. And a lot of people will rather prefer that DSLR with that speed light, or that mirrorless camera with natural light with boosted highlights and stuff of that nature in their previews and stuff like that, or anything with an extra fill light, over the cell phone. So those are some of the things to think about as well. You want to make sure that even though you're in a challenging situation, that you know how to get around some of the, the most basic issues that a DSLR or a mirrorless camera might have, and a cell phone. So another thing that you can do with your advanced camera is try to jog yourself in manual mode or manual focus. And I've always used manual mode as far as my modes for shooting in this type of situation. But manual focus can help your camera focus or actuate the shutter without you having to worry about it auto exposing. A lot of times when you're stuck in a situation where you can't auto expose for yourself and compensate for all the random light changes, you will focus on something that your camera won't lock focus on. You will attempt to focus on something your camera can't focus on. And if everything is tethered to that button, that shutter button, which is your auto exposure lock and your auto focus lock, then if it can't find your autofocus lock, it won't auto expose. Or if it auto exposes and it can't find focus, it will not release that shutter. So it has to have those two qualifications met before it releases the shutter. If it can't auto expose, or if it can't auto focus, then it will not release the shutter, and you're stuck with, wait, hold on, let me get a shot. Let me get a sec. Let me get a sec. So when you put it in manual focus, and it's usually the focus that's the culprit of this, and you're not using the center point for autofocus, and you're not focusing recomposing to make it easier for the camera, the autofocus is the culprit that's the problem. And so what you might want to do is use your live view screen, especially if you have a Sony or any camera that has focus peaking. Use that live view screen to help you get manual focus. Shoot at a more stop down aperture, your f5.6s, your f6.3s, and your f7.1s. Maybe not f7.1 because you don't have a lot of light in there to begin with, but Try to get it to where you're not dealing with such a thin depth of field, like 2.8 and 1.8 and 1.2. Just because you don't have a lot of light does not mean that light is the highest priority when it comes to releasing that shutter, because once you release that shutter, they want images that are in focus too. So you want to balance your focus with the ability to gain light, and that all has to do with your camera lens. So those are some of the things to think about if you're an advanced photographer. Like I said, if you're a cell phone photographer, just hope and pray, because this is some of the most challenging photography atmospheres that you're going to ever come by, whether it's in a low light gym, whether it's in a low light theater, whether it's in a low light event space, anywhere, hotel, country club, wherever the Prom is. It's just, you are challenged, and you have to understand that. As far as people placement, people need to be placed in spots where other people are not walking past your shot. Try to get them maybe when they're sitting down without food, because a lot of people don't like to be taking pictures of when they're eating food. And then if you can get them to kind of crowd a space and get a whole big picture and have other people fall away, then that's a good thing too. Make sure you have enough space to back up, because if you're using a crop frame sensor, which a lot of people are, you don't have as much space as somebody with a full frame sensor. But along with that, if you have a full frame sensor, you don't want to distort the people who are on the edges of the frame. So you want to back up and zoom in a little bit, maybe a little 35 millimeter action. Try not to do 24, because 24, if you get somebody on the edge of the frame at 24, you are asking for trouble and distortion to wrap them around the edges of that lens, and it's not going to look like regular body proportions, and you're going to be mad at your image at the end of the day. But you might not be able to see that in the live view preview screen. So those are some of the things to think about. Maybe try to at least come up with a 35 millimeter focusing distance from your subjects, no matter how big the crowd is. Sometimes you're able to get away with it. Try to be a photographer. Try to get people, hey, can I get some space? Hey, can you give me some space? Hey, can I move this out the way to get this picture off? Hey, I need to stand on this to get it. Be a photographer. Do what it takes to get that shot, and that shot without being distorted, because people are starting to see these deficiencies where the cell phone can have a rectifying lens where the lens may or may not distort as much as a full frame lens. But you don't want to be in Lightroom also in Photoshop trying to correct distortion issues when you don't have to. All you need to do is try your best to zoom in as much as possible, not chop anything off. Have them cater the people to each other. Hey, get closer, guys, get closer. Hey, bring your hands in closer together. Somebody grab somebody's hand over the shoulder, whatever. Make it work for you, because at the end of the day, it's you on the line. It's like, oh, this guy's a professional. He's a photographer. This guy, he got a big camera. He needs to have big results. And sometimes you don't have the luxury to be like, oh, I just want to be prissy and not move people out of the way or move things in the situation out of the way. Now, if you're a cell phone photographer, again, pray. Because, the cell phones don't have that much space. If you need to crop in, maybe crop in. If they can sacrifice, on the dance floor, some of the look of their gown or, a tuxedo, do a cropped up shot, and you can get closer, and getting closer, and you can bring in the flash. You can get a little bit more illumination out of your cell phone. Clean those cell phone lenses off. I cannot stress that enough. That'll help it focus. That'll help it get a cleaner image, things of that nature. You want to be in the best situation for your cell phone, because you don't have a lot of luxuries. Whereas us photographers that have interchangeable lens cameras, we can go to a wider lens or bring a flash, offer ourselves light where we don't have it, place lights where we need them, and get short loops and Rembrandts and butterfly lights and modifiers and all this stuff to give us the ideal situation. You don't have that luxury if you're a cell phone photographer. You probably will never have that luxury. Also, using your screen will help a lot more, since the cell phones have bigger screens than the DSLRs on average. You can click and hold and lock focus, and then take the picture and get a crisp, clear image. You probably want to focus on the person that either is the most important, or you want to try to get the most, at least somebody in the center of the frame. You don't have the luxury of controlling aperture, so as far as focus throughout the image, you're needle in a haystack. I don't know what to tell you. Cell phones are just designed that way. But if you have a camera, a real camera, you don't have to do your best. Bounce light off the ceiling if you have white ceilings. Do things to help yourself get the best lighting in the situation. Rear curtain sync will liven up any lights in the background and shooting at a lower shutter speed, but you also don't necessarily have that option on a cell phone, and you probably don't want to be fussing with Lightroom and trying to get the best settings out of your cell phone if you downloaded that app for your cell phone. So, and when you're on a dance floor, if you got a cell phone, just try to get yourself in the best lighting situation and get the best image. That's pretty much all I have to say about being inside the venue. Of course, you want to be able to shoot at the best settings. I prefer manual if you're shooting with a camera, DSLR, so on and so forth. I can't tell you the exact settings, but you have to know that if you're using a shutter speed, you want to make sure that nobody's blurry in the shot. So at least 1/100th of a second or 1/125th of a second or higher, and then they're gonna be doing dances at certain speeds. So you have to compensate for that. Aperture, you want it wide, but not too wide that you don't, if you're taking a group picture, that you're not not distorted, but having people out of focus just because they're on different tiers or different planes of focus than the person in the center. So you want to have an aperture that's your 5.3s, your 5.6s and your 6.3s and your 7.1s, maybe, if you have enough light for that situation. But you also want to balance the fact that you don't have a lot of light to work with. So you want to have your wide apertures, your 2.8s. If you're able to get some, some zoom, some Holy Trinity 2.8, some L lenses, some G master lenses, some Zeiss. If you got that kind of money, do your best with space. If you have a full frame camera, try your best to shoot wide but not distort people, because 90%, 99% of the images that you're going to take in proms is going to be of people. Take all that into account. Like I said, if you're doing ISO, you don't want to ramp the ISO too much if you have a crop frame or old camera, because they don't do well in low light situations. And even if you have a full frame camera, we're still talking about super low light situations. So the light offered by the DJ booth or anything else like that may or may not liven and give you the pop that you want to. So consider bringing speed lights and external flashes and stuff like that. If you have enough time, try to light the venue as best you can with flashes on stands, but that might not be the best ideal situation with liability, knocking down flashes, so on and so forth. There's a whole bunch of things to think about when you're taking photography at the venue of the prom. But these are some of the things that I think about every time I go out for a prom, every time I go out and do images, especially at weddings. I think weddings are on the tier of proms in some cases, depending on how big or small the wedding is and how big or small the prom is. So you want to think about that. Always have cars if you're a professional photographer. Always be in a situation where you're able to compensate for the things that you lack, and you'll be in a perfect situation when you come. Well, not perfect, but you'll be in a good situation when it comes to proms. And that's pretty much my tips for inside the venue of the prom, whether you have a cell phone or a $300+ camera, mirrorless, or DSLR. Now, DSLR without mirrorless, especially if it's Canon, does not allow you to have too many luxuries when it comes to manual focusing, and that will help you if you have a mirrorless camera, because Sony's and Panasonics, they tend to give you more luxuries for manual focus assist, allowing you to defeat the fact that you can't focus well in a lot of situations with crop frame sensors. But yeah, think about all these things when you're out shooting for prom images to get the best prom images. I'm done with CenturyFX Studios. If you have any questions, let me know. I tried to get to everything just running off the top of my head. I don't have any script like I did for the last episode, but I think I gave you guys enough information to at least think about how to make some of the best prom pictures for this 2019 season and take this into the 2020 season, whatever your year that you're taking your prom images. I'm Devin with CenturyFX Studios once again, guys, and thank you for watching.